The Matsuda's plan to topple the Otomo while they were vulnerable had failed, chiefly because they were in fact far less vulnerable than they looked. Their troops were veteran, their monopoly over foreign trade made them rich, and their people's faith in the new religion was inseparably linked to their duties for the Otomo clan. Yoshiaki's poorly disguised bid for the shogunate was uplifted on the enthusiasm of a Christian crusade, a crusade led by his own son Yoshishige and conducted by any means necessary. Do you swear in the name of the Lord that you will keep what I tell you now absolutely secret? I swear it, Master. Good, good. There is something I need you to do for me. Anything, Master? No, wait. You'll be remaining dressed, for the most part. I need you to travel to Numata. Master, you can't send me away. You'll be back in my embrace soon enough, my faithful servant. There is a man there named Narita Arisada. He leads the armies that General Kobayakawa wants to fight. I have spoken with the Lord, and he confirmed what I feared. If we fight while this man still lives, defeat is certain. You must kill him, in the name of our Saviour, and to become our Saviour yourself. Of course, Master. Do you understand what I'm asking you to do? Kill the heir to the Matsuda clan. It will be easy, Master. Your faith is very strong indeed. I rather think you will have no trouble. But I should warn you, to take the life of another can be daunting. It will not be a problem, Master. Hello there and welcome back to Barbarian Masters. So we're continuing our war with the Matsuda, just using my missionaries to take a cheeky peek over the border to see what they have in the next province, Mimisaka, one of the key provinces to the enemy's territory. It seemed to be free, so Yoshiaki is just going to come down and steal it. They've got a couple of monks on their way up to harass our missionaries, no doubt, but their military forces, very scant indeed. We'll just move right in. Now, Mimisaka is an important province because it links the two circuits, the southern and northern mountain circuits. So you need this province to switch between different sides of the country, essentially. So it's very nice to control it. We can make sure that the Matsuda now can't do anything against all of the territories to the north that we have taken. Although it does mean our domains are really weird shape because we've advanced along the northern circuit, but not at all on the south. So we need to try and change that if we can and actually make some progress with Kobayakawa and Yoshishige. First, though, there was an opportunity for a bit of action with our new junior general, Kurokawa. I noticed that at Inaba here, the Matsuda don't have a garrison. Inaba is a nice, valuable settlement, and Kurokawa's mission was to defend Hoki, but because of how the choke points work, taking Inaba is just as valid a way to defend Hoki as being there ourselves, especially now that Mimisaka has fallen and Yoshiaki is blocking all of the access from the southern circuit. So we're just going to head out and try and take it in the next turn. We had to take down here a Matsuda fleet, just some bow warriors who were coming towards our trade nodes. No particular problem, although I did experience once again the little bit of an issue you can get with the black ship. That is its flammability. It's made of wood and full of explosives, and most enemy clans seem to have researched fire arrows by this point, and the fire arrows from a single boy can be enough to actually get the flames going. This effectively disables the ship. You have to switch into repair mode to try and put the flames out. It makes the crew, well, some of them crouch and do something with their shoes, the other guys dance around inside the fire, and eventually this will cause the fire to go away. And if you don't do that, you can continue to fire but your ship might explode, so not worth the risk. And luckily here, all of our regular boats will be enough to just crush the enemy fleet. I had to go on to fight another naval battle, and this was a bit of a mistake. I realised what I could have done here is sent all of my ships except the black ship to go take out this Bokuboya, then I would be able to auto-resolve it. Instead, I ended up having to fight it myself because I foolishly brought the black ship over. But anyway, no problems there. So back to this front line, I want to do something. I want to advance against the Matsuda and try to start taking territory, even though it's looking hard. There are 4 armies around, so we need to come up with a way to not fight all 4 of them with R2, because that could be very challenging indeed, and would be unlikely to actually yield us any results. The first thing I tried to do was take out the general who was sitting in one of the armies in reserve. Our geisha came in to give it a go, but there were some guards nearby, so she couldn't just cut the guy down like she did to the heir to the Matsuda clan previously. But of course, we have plenty of chances to do it again, and geisha are unlikely to be caught while attempting to do assassination, so you can just keep trying over and over. So I started thinking, how can we actually make an attack here that won't just be disastrous? And I realized there is a way we can do this. Firstly, I noted that Kurakara is 1 turn away from taking Inaba, and that once we take it, would be very unlikely to take anything else with that army. We need to secure Inaba and Mimasaka, and Hoki in fact, before we can continue our advance. That means peace would be an option, and the Matsuda do want peace. So considering that, we could make an attack against their first 2 armies on the southern circuit, and if we win, then get a peace deal so that we don't have to fight the other 2 and we can rebuild and secure our gain. So that's the plan for the next turn, but before we get to that, the Matsuda's monks are once again up to no good. Treachery and malice, treachery and malice. These are your kin, your watchwords. Your evil will infect all that you love and destroy them. You do not understand, friend. Evil is but a means to an end that is good and great. All of us can be cleansed by the light of the Lord if we only accept his rule. If we accept a world of demons, a world where death is sudden and unexpected, where one cannot afford to hope for a better life. Why be so pessimistic? The Lord's word can uplift us. Your lords, heavenly and earthly, have brought only death to this land, and they show no signs of stopping. You fool yourself with lies because you are a coward and wish to die last with the blood of all those who came before you on your hands. It's not like you say. Then meet my eyes when you claim you are innocent. Every spirit here can feel your dishonesty, and they grow angry, watchful and vengeful. They will not leave you alone if you pass up the chance to mend your ways. Wait, how do I mend my ways? Take off that barbarian robe. Never speak their tongue again. Never walk beneath their banner again. Never think of the man you tried to become. Instead, only be the man you really are. A pure man, a man of dignity, honor, respect. A man who reveres the spirits and his ancestors, and is revered by them in turn. You are powerful enough that you do not need my help to achieve this. You need only take the first step and awake from your dream. While the enemy's philosophical arguments gave us some trouble, sending in a geisha with a concealed blade was enough to wound their leading monk. The other monk will now be subject to a bombardment of our own persuasion. This time we were able to perplex him, meaning he'll come back eventually, but he's going to have a long think about becoming a Christian at the very least. The annoying thing about having to deal with all those monks was that I needed my missionaries to prevent a rebellion happening here in Hoki while our army is away. So now we actually need to put something back in there right now, otherwise it may rebel. I realized I can send cavalry back from Yoshiaki's force to garrison it, and since Yoshiaki's unlikely to be attacked as he just sits there, that's okay. Plus cavalry in a siege defense wouldn't be too useful. So I sent one unit back to confirm it was possible. Once I saw that it was, I thought I'll send the rest of the cav back as well, but there was some sort of weird switcheroo. They ended up walking backwards and forwards outside the castle. They lost all their movement points, and now they can't get in, so we still don't have public order secured, and these two units are just stuck here now. So that meant I had to send a unit of cavalry back from Kurakawa's force, and that's not very nice since we're about to make an attack. Now we've weakened ourselves, at least we do prevent that rebellion there by stabilising public order. Now we'll carry on and make the attack. The balance bar was still super far in our favour, even though our army is not very good. We just have numerical advantage, so we'll quickly storm in and take Inaba province with irrelevant losses since we'll have time to replenish. Now we're sitting in the castle, we'll have to wait here for a long time once again to control public order, so we can't advance anymore. The nice thing about Inaba province is that firstly it's very rich, and secondly it has the building that allows you to recruit units with upgraded accuracy. That would make it a pretty nice place to recruit some new matchlock troops, so we'll start building the Nanban port to make that an option. We'll need a siege workshop and some samurai dojos to get the higher tier ones later on. So now it's time to make our attack against these two armies in front of Kobayakawa and Yoshishige, but immediately things are going wrong. What I want to do is besiege the castle with one of my armies. That will allow both of mine to then fight the army outside the castle in a 2-on-1 engagement, nice and easy, perhaps even just force it to retreat. But for some reason it's not letting me target the castle. I can target the units on either side, but the castle itself can't be targeted by our men. That's an enormous problem. That's going to make things quite literally twice as hard as they are meant to be here. But I need to do something in order to complete my plan of getting a peace treaty, and there was still a chance that simply fighting this battle will achieve the result we want. A completely even fight here. It's two armies and one unit versus two armies and one unit, both sides having about the same amount of Ashigaru and samurai. We need to draw out the garrison from their castle, kill it, and kill it in such a way that we have enough troops left over to then take the castle and get peace before anything else happens. I form up the army with swords on the flanks, spears along the centre, skirmishers in the back line and matchlocks in front, with a few reserves at the very back with our generals, and we start marching towards where the enemy must be. They have a really nice position and we can't even see them right now, but we can see the ends of their line sticking out of the forested hill they've set up on, so we know they're up there. That's a supreme position that gives them extra defense against melee and ranged attacks, so ideally we want to try and get them to come out and attack us. My first move to try and achieve this was to send out all of the matchlock troops clustered up into a small group so it wouldn't provoke much of the enemy line, and to try and snipe away at their archers who will be slightly outrange and can actually see on the edge of their formation. Firstly to kill the archers, but also to see if them taking losses would provoke their whole army to start moving and attack us once they realise they're losing a skirmish battle. The enemy fire back with fire arrows. Those are pretty powerful against even our armoured samurai gunners, since fire arrows have slight armour piercing properties in this game. Despite the casualties, we should still be able to win, even with our line narrowed, so we're not using all our guns at once. We do have the superior ranged abilities here, against one unit at least, so eventually they get out of here having taken sufficient casualties, and this allowed us to see the enemy army just for a moment. We can see it's looking pretty formidable. They've got 3 rows of infantry, a mix of Ashigaru and samurai. All of their archers are on the flanks, this reveals to me, along with their cavalry, so at least we know what their setup is, but that central formation is going to be pretty much impossible to attack as it is now, so I wanted to continue trying to provoke some sort of action from them, but this time they started sending forward more archers to engage with us. And now the weight of fire from their arrows is going to really start having an impact on our men. We're losing gunners fast, and we're not killing the enemy fast enough, and more importantly, we're not getting the enemy out of their superior position. The scouts are all back in one piece. It seems the distraction worked. And the whole force is in the forest, 200 paces away at most. Well, what are we going to do about it? They want us to attack them. So that's the main thing we must avoid. I do not believe the Lord will simply strike them down for us. We have to draw them out. This is what Lord Yoshiaki would do. He's done this before. The matchlocks are the key. There are more matchlocks lying on the ground in bloodied hands than firing. Whatever your plan is, it's failing. I know, but there must be another way. Father and I trusted you to lead our men, General. You are failing everyone. You've learned nothing. I need some time to think. We need to win without matchlocks. I haven't learned much about that at all. After we switched to using our archers for the skirmishing rather than the matchlocks, we were able to finish off the rest of the enemy archers who were currently attacking us, and then we were even able to fire a few arrows off into this cavalry unit, just light cavalry, but they did decide to attack us upon doing this, although they weren't completely sure. They went for it in the end, as we can see. So they're going to charge forwards. I got my archers to rush backwards, and behind the archers was a Yari wall, so we simply drew the cavalry onto that. They still did significant damage with their own charge bonus when they hit it, but then in the ensuing melee we should be able to take them down. With the defeat of those cavalry, we've now pretty much annihilated the enemy's left flank with all of our skirmishing antics. We've taken many units away from them, but we still haven't achieved the key objective of making the entire enemy army move somewhere else, preferably just moving into us and coming out of the forest and slightly down off the hill. But since the enemy's left flank was now weak, I decided to try a cavalry attack using just the cavalry on their own to finish off what was left of their archers, since I knew the archers were unguarded. The problem was there were more archers than I thought, because they had extra units hidden away, and they turned to attack our cavalry as we came in, and we took decent losses to their fire arrows. They're also bow samurai, so they're going to last a while in melee, unlike these Ashigaru who just broke as we charged on through. So now what I wanted to do was keep this melee going and try and test the enemy's staying power, try and get rid of these samurai before the enemy do anything. Fortunately, they were still being very passive. Their army's right there. We can actually see parts of it now, but it's not attacking us, but for this one unit of archers that marched forward to attack our own archers, but that's fine since we'll just outbow them in an easy skirmish there. So now a bit later, I did manage to defeat all of those samurai, and the enemy army still ignoring us, so I thought, well, I'll just put my cavalry behind their army for later. They can rest up and get their stamina back, and perhaps later on it will be useful to be able to make a rear attack from a hidden position back there. And their archers, of course, got annihilated. They kept walking into our arrows to reposition, so they lost pretty easily. So now we're back to where we were before. Both armies still just facing off against each other, but the enemy now have lost their entire left flank. They suddenly made a move against us though, this time on the right. They sent a unit of cavalry forwards to attack my main line, or the edge of it. I moved forwards with some Naginata Ashigaru to try and block this charge, and I even ordered them to actually attack the enemy cavalry unit, not noticing that those cavalry immediately rushed backwards, thus drawing my men forwards. And I think the fact I was now really close to them made the enemy army notice how close the rest of my army was as well, and maybe start thinking about coming out to fight me. I had actually advanced a tiny bit up the hill, so I am facing uphill towards them right now. Not the best situation. Now on the enemy's right flank, I wanted to take out all the archers they had stationed there, so I made another cavalry attack. It didn't quite work as I would have hoped, because the first unit I hit, these Ashigaru, didn't just get annihilated by my charge like I thought they might, so I couldn't then continue on to attack the other units of archers, which were now attacking us. My Naganatas, who were meant to be fighting the cav, managed to lose them and end up fighting samurai instead. Not very nice. And the main fight along the front of the line is going to start now as well. We can mostly give the enemy Yari walls to attack, so that, in theory at least, gives us a nice advantage. But we are going uphill, and even though the enemy are mostly using inferior infantry, the Katana Ashigaru, we're actually going to have a really hard time on that front line engagement. Now the enemy's cavalry on our left are now attacking our cavalry, who are also bogged down fighting archers, so a brawl is emerging there. I brought most of my sword samurai over here as well to fight with the enemy's samurai, who seem to be amassing on that flank. And the front line fight, as I mentioned, not the best situation really. Even though a lot of the time we theoretically have the advantage, maybe it's just the slight hill in the enemy's favour, but most of their katana ashigaru were annihilating us, and in other places they have samurai who are probably going to be able to break through even our ashigaru in Yari wall formation. At least further down the line on the right hand side, since we already took out the left flank of the enemy's army, we can just quickly fold around and go for the rear attack right away with no resistance. Also doing some kiting at the back to get rid of some of the enemy's units in the centre. Now back over to our left, things were starting to look quite bad. Lots of enemy units from the centre came over to engage here, and our cavalry were just getting taken out. We weren't really able to overcome their archers for some reason. Even these ashigaru archers managed to defeat some of our cavs. Not quite sure how that actually happened, but the end result was that we lost our left flank entirely. All of the men I sent to attack were defeated or routed off the field. The enemy do have us there, not very good at all. Yoshishige is taking this opportunity to get out of the very dangerous centre of the battlefield to run after an enemy unit that was chasing some skirmishers off in the distance. Meanwhile, the front is still being somewhat held by my reserve samurai, who I sent forwards to try and stop the enemy just crushing up against our skirmishers and wiping them out as they came down the hill. But we only have so many samurai. The enemy have more than us at this point. Here I'm trying to shoot some samurai advancing on our gunners. Didn't work very well, and now we're going to have to fight them in melee. Luckily samurai gunners are okay, but really they're okay against ashigaru. Against other samurai, melee samurai, they're not going to perform very well. Since the enemy are really across the board breaking through our front line, it's going to be up to our skirmishing troops to keep falling back, drawing the enemy off the hill and going in different directions to try and still put fire on them and gradually whittle them down. This unit I accidentally took off skirmish mode, so they're going to fight in melee now accidentally. At least things are going well right at the back of the enemy's army, where our right flank is now rear attacking the enemy. We can get quite a lot of kills here, taking out ashigaru with the samurai sent around on that side, so that's going to actually tilt things in our favour in terms of numbers, and now the enemy's morale will start to drop. We do successfully draw lots of the enemy out into the open and make attacks against them using cavalry and skirmishers to weaken some of the enemy there, but a lot of the enemy in the centre fortunately routed once the guys behind them had been killed, and the guys off on our left also routed without doing anything, so there was no real consequence to losing that flank. They didn't come in to make any further attacks, so the battle just suddenly ended when the enemy left, even though things were still looking a bit hairy. A close victory, it's not what we needed.
Father, the expedition has failed at the most crucial moment. General Kobayakawa kept arguing with me over the best course of action, and delayed us so much that the enemy settled on the best terrain. Then he made an incompetent attempt to dislodge them before sending the whole army in. It was a waste of life, Father. The enemy lost their spirits by some gift of luck, and we took the field, but our army is shattered. It is over for us here. I will take command of the General's troops and return to safety before he instigates any further disasters. My lord, I write with news of the recent action in Numata. Due to the insistence of Lord Yoshiaki, we did not besiege their main force, as you suggested. Instead, we invited their forces to unite for a decisive battle outside of the castle. We failed to move in time to take the high ground, but Lord Yoshiaki would not consent to withdrawing. We won the right flank with minimal casualties, and took the rest of the battle because of it. However, Lord Yoshiaki led the center too close to the enemy, and was overwhelmed by their numbers. I proposed that I take a small force to capture their castle before they regroup, but your son prefers to return home. I will accept his decision, but please know that I was thinking of our campaign in Kyushu, and I saw how victory could still be grasped. If you will allow me the freedom, I will be more ambitious next time.
I'm going to negotiate a peace deal with the Matsuda, and this time they were actually willing to give me some money, so I guess because we defeated a lot of their military forces, they felt threatened, so maybe that was enough to get the money out of them, although we were also almost as defeated as they were in that battle. We lost 2,000 men to their 3,000, but we don't have the opportunity to take any territory, so ultimately the result is indecisive. We're going to scurry back to our lands, and both sides will replenish and probably end up being just as strong once the war inevitably comes back. Now, while the peace continues, we can still attack the enemy in a sense. We can send our geisha to defeat generals. That will remove one unit from their army at least. And this doesn't count as an act of war. It counts as something suspicious if they find out you do it. And I think you might get a relationship penalty with the faction for doing this, but that doesn't matter. Everybody absolutely hates us, so assassinations are going to be the least of their concerns. So our geisha here just comes into a castle, just killing her way in somehow. The animations in these cutscenes are sort of cheaply done by hand, so they do look a bit strange. She somehow gets in, finds the general just sitting around, and goes in for a classic strip and stab tactic, distracting him with the nudity and then just going in with the knife. It seems to work apparently, even though he had a gigantic sword right next to him. He didn't manage to use it, he was so distracted, and it all worked out just fine. So that's one fewer general for our future enemy. I'm being so brazen about the fact that I plan to break the peace treaty that I'm even going to move our main force up to the border to just stand there ominously as a sign of what's going to come. This should intimidate the enemy. And from this position we can actually move south to attack their daimyo once the war is back on again. He's stationed here in this castle with a decent number of troops, but nothing our main force can't get around. So that's the plan for the future, very obviously set up. Another thing we can do during the peace period is a bit of diplomacy, and even though I still have this strange glitchy effect where it says I'm allied to an enemy clan with pretty much everyone, which gives me 4 or 5 realm divides worth of relationship penalty for some reason, we can now force people to trade with us. People were willing to trade, I think because we have a complete monopoly on foreign imports. We have all the stuff, so everyone else has to trade with us if they want to get resources at this point. So we're going to make a ton of money organising all of this. And also I noticed while I was doing this that previously I'd claimed the Uesugi are one of the dominant clans. It's actually the Date who have just captured all the Uesugi territory, who are the dominant clan over there in the east alongside the Tagada. So we end up making thousands more extra a turn. We can use that to invest in our economy and prepare for the next stage of the war. Like in the previous war, the Otomo main force under Yoshiaki had pushed the front line forwards, but deliberately halted the breakthrough. The delay not only allowed time for supplies to be gathered and public opposition to Christianity to be talked away, but it also tempered the appearance of aggression. For, to others, Yoshiaki seemed to be taking far less than he could be doing if he truly was acting as just a ruthless warlord. There was another reason to view him favourably too. His clan was the only source for countless luxury and craft goods produced overseas, with his famous black ship protecting his trading fleet of unprecedented size. Combined with his access to goods procured through Nanban trade routes from the far side of the world, the nobility of Japan became dependent on the goodwill of the rising daimyo. Dependency and fear. His position in society was becoming more like that of the shogun every day. That is it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks as always to all of the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making this happen. So with our newfound wealth, we'll plough on and see what more we can take from Japan in the next episode of Barbarian Masters.